Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, I'm going to be continuing my tier list, this time focusing on A tier. Now, A tier, the almighty tier, this tier is for spirits that are too strong for B tier but are missing some S tier attributes. They usually cannot give out consistent support, or they can support but have some weak matchups. They can do powerful things but are inconsistent in doing so. Their baseline is still powerful, which is why they end up here. If these spirits are supported, they can carry and reach S or even X tier. So this is that middle ground between S, which are those pretty overpowered spirits, and B tier, which is what I think is the baseline of Spirit Island. I think a lot of these spirits in A tier are pretty reasonable with minor adjustments, and they should be pretty balanced. And just looking at my criteria again, we have number one, consistency. How frequently can I replicate the desired outcome? Number two is matchups across all single level 6 adversaries. Number three is the number of spirit combos. How many team compositions does the spirit fit into? Number four is number of high power spirit combos. Can the spirit be brought into 6/6 compositions and actively contribute? Number five is the ability to give out support. Number six is the ability to tank. Can the spirit absorb extra invaders from other boards? Number seven is the ability to carry or take over the game. How well does the spirit utilize support elements from other spirits? Number eight is how much blight does the spirit take? Number nine is can the spirit create isolation pockets? Number 10, how much fear does the spirit generate? Can the spirit fear burst? Number 11, is this spirit edge case proof? How does it perform when the worst explorer occurs or when a bad event flips? Number 12, how many boards are viable for the spirit? Does it require a certain board to succeed? And finally, can the spirit clear its board? Starting off at number 21, we have Serpent slumbering beneath the island. Now, this is a spirit that has fluctuated across my lists over the last couple years. I mean, it's been number one on my list, but it's also been as low as low B tier. I think low A tier is pretty fair, and that's because Serpent has access to some very broken combos, especially into very high difficulty that no other spirit can really do. But it does have some problems. So before I kind of jump into what the spirit or why it's ranked, I'm going to talk about really the overpowered build. And really that build is we're going to go to 2 plays. And then every turn we're going to play Absorb Essence as well as Elemental Aegis. And Elemental Aegis is going to give us a defend that scales with the number of presence that we've absorbed. And every turn we're going to be absorbing with Absorb Essence. So essentially this Aegis is going to increase in defend as the game goes on, and eventually it can get to be about defend 10 or 11. And this AoE defend 10 for 1 energy is absurd. Now also when you play both of these two cards, you also will hit your right innate, which allows you to kill towns and generate fear. And then as soon as you activate or uncover this any here, you can start generating energy with that left innate for you and as well as any spirit that is absorbed. Snake also has some busted combos if you combo it with memory, or if you combo it with fractured plus green and you hyper proliferate. It also has a very crazy endgame of 12-5 and just very, very powerful. Okay, so why do I have it listed at number 21? So consistency, it is very consistent. You're just reclaim and playing Elemental Aegis and Absorb Essence. You're trying to find the spot on the board that has the most adjacencies such that you can defend that or defend the most amount of lands with your defend card. And it's consistent because you're also generating a solid 3 fear every turn, and you're also giving energy and elements with your Absorb Essence. Matchups across all single level 6 adversaries. Now this is where Snake takes a bit of a hit. And that's because there are some matchups where Snake isn't really good. The first one is Habsburg Livestock. That one can be very painful just because Habsburg is blighting. The lands are such high damage that your Elemental Aegis is not able to keep those lands from blighting. And you really just don't have much interaction until blight hits your board. Now, the Spirit's not unplayable in the matchup, it's just not a good matchup. Some other poor matchups, Prussia. Yes, your Aegis is really strong into Prussia, but a lot of times you're not going to be able to clear the invaders properly, and you're going to rely on other players to do that for you. And that's fine, you are a support spirit, but the fact that you have to rely on other spirits does take a knock when placed on my tier list. Number of spirit combos. Snake slots into to several spirit combos. I can't think of a spirit that doesn't want to get Snake support. Snake is giving elements, extra card gains, as well as extra card plays, as well as an ability to defend multiple lands. So, number of high spirit combos, as I already mentioned, Snake plus Memory is one of the strongest combos in the game, but also Snake can be placed into many other spirit compositions and succeed into 6/6s. I've already talked about the ability to give out support. Snake can also tank because you do have the Elemental Aegis, the ability to carry or take over the game. This is where Snake, it varies. Um, it definitely can if you hyper proliferate it, but if you just give it a couple tools, a couple support elements, you're not going to see Snake completely dominate. You really need to throw a lot of proliferation effects to really see Snake succeed. How much blight does it take on average? It depends on the adversary. Aegis is going to stem the bleeding up into a lot of adversaries, but like Prussia, or not Prussia, Russia, Habsburg Livestock, these are adversaries where you're going to be blighting and there's not much you really can do about that. Can the spirit create an isolation pocket? Nope, this is not a spirit that can do that. How much fear does the spirit generate? It generates an okay amount. You're generating about 3 a turn with that right innate, and then about 1 extra via counterattacks. Not much, but it's not going to be 0. Is the spirit edge case proof? I'm not sure if this is. I'm not that experienced with Snake to be able to answer this question. How many boards are viable for this spirit? Not sure if I can answer this question either. Snake is a spirit that wants to play across multiple boards because you're Elemental Aegis, so I don't really think it has a good board. Um, Obviously, you want a board that has more adjacencies, so maybe like board H would be great because you can like Aegis here and hit both your wetlands or your jungles or your mountains. And number 13, can the spirit clear its board? It can in some matchups, and in other matchups, it cannot. Serpent is one of the best late game spirits in the game. The longer the game goes, the stronger the spirit is going to get, and it really has this big flip, this big switch it flips up, and that's right around it's like turn 8ish 9 is when it just absolutely destroys the adversary. Now, I can see Snake raising up a little bit in my tier list into upper A tier, but I have a hard time seeing it reach S tier just because it has those weak matchups against some of the level 6s, and that really hurts the spirit. I think if it were to raise up, I would have to see it be or actively contribute in those weaker matchups and allow another spirit to carry Snake to victory. Looking at number 20, we have the Finder of Paths Unseen. Now, this is another spirit that used to be up in X tier and then dropped to B tier, and now I have it at the bottom of A tier. And there are some players that really claim that Finder can break the game, and in some cases, Finder can, just because you have so much potential to move invaders. But at the time of making this video, I really haven't seen Finder break the game outside of proliferation strategies. And that's one of the main reasons why it's held back at the bottom of A tier at this time. I think if I can see Finder excel into a lot of matchups without getting funneled all of the support, then I think that can be a good argument for the spirit raising up. But right now, there just isn't a player in the community that can play Finder at a very high level. So, consistency, how frequently can I replicate the desired outcome? Not sure I can answer this question for Finder at this time. Matchups across all single level 6 adversaries. Now, I can't answer this. Finder does have some pretty bad matchups. I've seen Russia and HME be pretty problematic for the spirit. England, it's not bad into England, but you're generating pretty much no fear. with the spirit. And if you're on a 6 spirit team, then there's going to be some problems because now everybody else is going to have to make up your fear, and likely they're going to end up getting double builds because of it. I've also seen France be pretty challenging with this spirit because a lot of times Finder wants to dump everything into that land too, and you're basically relying on that disease to stop the build action there with France. And if you get that disease ignored, then you just lose with the spirit. And there's been so many games where that's actually happened to us just because they end up building like 5, 6, 7 towns in a single turn because of that disease ignore. So number of spirit combos, Finder is able to combo with a lot of spirits. I mean, you have plenty of, because of your special rules, you have plenty of ways to create adjacencies such that spirits can push things through your presence. Um, a lot of ways to move invaders around, including cities. So you're able to soften up lands for other spirits. Number of high spirit combos. This is something that I am familiar with. Finder with green. Any proliferation effect on Finder just goes a long way. Elements goes a long way as well. Ability to give out support, it kind of can with Traveler's Boon or making adjacencies with that special rule, but this is not a spirit that can pick up like a support minor like Gift of Power or Gift of Constancy and then give that power card out. Ability to tank, this is not a spirit that can tank. You're trying to shuttle all of your invaders off your board onto another board. Can it carry and take over the game? It can if it's given the proper support. Really, you want proliferation effects. Um, how much blight does the spirit take on average? It depends on the adversary. Like I said, if you're dumping all of your invaders off your board onto another board, you're not going to take much blight. But then again, that other person's board that you're dumping the invaders on, they're going to have a tougher time. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? It most definitely can, and it absolutely needs that in order to function. And you're going to use that. You're going to use your right innate, create those isolation lands, as well as your power cards and your left innate to kind of shuttle invaders around to isolate your board. Spirit is not generating any fear, and it is susceptible to some edge case events. Any event that's throwing extra invaders on your board or increasing the damage could cause problems. Also, because you're not placing a lot of presence, you have a bad blight card that flips, and that's going to be causing presence destruction. You may find yourself low on presence number. How many boards are viable for the spirit? I don't have enough information to answer this question. And can the spirit clear its board? Yes, it definitely can, but it's moving all of those problems onto another board. I can see Finder moving up the ranks in the future. It's really going to come down to how the spirit performs into level sixes. I need to see more games with the spirit, especially into games when it's not just, like I said, moving all of the invaders onto another board. I want to see how can the spirit function, and I definitely can see Finder moving up in the tier list in the future. I really just need to see someone play it at a very high level, and also that isn't just moving all of the invaders from your board onto other boards. Coming out number 19, we have Lure of the Deep Wilderness. Lure is such a strong spirit, and that's because it has some very powerful uniques. Softly Beckon is going to gather multiple explorers, towns, Dahan, and beasts. And then you're going to have your Swallowed, which is going to do massive amount of damage in a land where you have built up tokens. You also are able to get rid of buildings very easily with that left innate, and then your special rule helps you ignore explorers for the purposes of ravages. Your tracks are very strong, and you have a very powerful end game as well as early game. Lure is very consistent, and it has very strong matchups against all single level 6 adversaries. I think your toughest matchup is probably England, and I still think there is a very good game to be played into England. I just think England is one of your weaker matchups. I'm into Prussia, France, Russia, HME, Lure just absolutely decimates. Number of spirit combos. This is a spirit that can combo quite well with other spirits. It's not going to be giving out support that much. The ways Lure gives out support is with this special rule here, where it allows you to ignore explorers during ravages. Very important into Russia, where you can make the game significantly easier for the team by throwing your presence around and ignoring those explorers. In addition, it has the ability to give out disease or wilds with Gift of the Untamed Wilds. But outside of those two effects, Lure doesn't give many many support effects to the team. Now, Lure is a great, I would say it's a great taker of support, and that's because a lot of times you're only a couple elements off from hitting your innates. If you look here, a lot of times I do this as my turn 1 with Lure, and if you get a fire plant, you can add Badlands, or if you get a, I guess you would need a Moon Air to get the city downgrade, but that can very well happen if you're playing with maybe a snake that's giving a Primordial Deeps turn 1, or maybe you're playing with a memory who can give elements. Um, Lure is a great target for any energy power boons, because a lot of times if you go straight bottom track, you're going to be energy starved. Number of high spirit combos. I don't have enough experience with Lure to be able to answer this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. I already talked about the ability to give out support, the ability to tank. I'm not sure Lure is a spirit that can tank. Can the spirit carry or take over the game? Yes, it very well can, especially if other spirits give it tools. How much blight does the spirit take on average? I'd probably say around 2 to 3, depends on the adversary and the explorers. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? It most definitely can, especially because it has this this innate turn 1, as well as softly beckon. And as I pointed out earlier, this is going to move. It's going to get rid of a town with that left innate, and then it's going to move 2 towns with softly beckon. So a lot of times, this spirit can really help create that pocket and facilitate that pocket for other spirits. It does generate a lot of fear, and that's because of that left innate, the right innate, and swallowed. Is the spirit edge case proof? Not sure if it is. How many boards are viable for this spirit? It can play on a lot of boards, but the best boards are the boards where it's a single inland land that's adjacent to all the coasts. And as you can see, board F is not that answer, or not that board. Board G is just terrible for you. If I can find, here we go, board E is a good example, where you have that one inland land that can hit all of the coasts. And that's what you're looking for with Lure. And there's 3 of those. It's board E, board B, and board A are the 3. Can the spirit clear its board? Yes, it most definitely can. I think Lure is a good example of an A tier spirit. It's definitely above the power curve, but it's not so strong that it just completely breaks the whole game in half. I personally do not like playing this spirit just because a lot of its power is tied into just a couple uniques, and I prefer to have I prefer spirits that need to draft in order to win the game, and Lure doesn't want to do that. Lure just wants to reclaim loop its hand over and over again. Looking at number 18, we have Wandering Voice Keen's Delirium, and this is another nature incarnate spirit. Wandering Voice is here mainly because it does a couple things really well. Number 1, it generates a lot of fear. Number 2, it gives out support every turn. And number 3, it is able to create and maintain a pocket very easily. Now, the typical build that Wandering Voice likes to do, or at least what I like to do, is I like to G2 top bottom. I like to play a single card. Let's say I play Frightful Keening. Then turn 2, I G2 bottom bottom. Play no cards, and then turn 3, I G2 bottom bottom. Reclaiming Frightful Keening, playing my 4 cards, and then I'm going to empower. I'll have this innate as well as maxing out this right innate. And by doing this every turn, you generate I think it's was it 2, 4, it's 7 fear, plus the buildings you kill. You get a ton of strife with that left innate. You're giving out support with Turmoil's Touch. There's just so much you can do by reclaim looping this over and over and over again. And this is the build that I like playing. There are other builds that are viable with voice, but I'm pretty sure the reclaim loop build is the strongest. So consistency, because you're entering this reclaim loop, it is very consistent across all adversaries. Now, the reason why it's a little bit lower on the list in A tier is because the matchups against all single level 6 adversaries, it does have some bad matchups, Russia and HME are pretty problematic with this spirit, but the rest of the matchups are an absolute breeze. The reason why Russia and HME are pretty bad is just because those adversaries throw so many explorers on the board, and you're really good at killing buildings. So you can find yourself getting into a sticky situation. Once again, it's not like those adversaries are unwinnable. It's just those aren't favorable matchups. The number of spirit combos, I'm not sure. Well, I mean, I know there's some combos like you have Ocean, right, where you can throw everything into the ocean with your pushes, which is pretty powerful. I guess that'd be closer to a high power spirit combo. And you are giving out Turmoil's Touch, but I'm not too sure how many spirit combos this spirit falls into. Mainly because like you want to be playing your 4 cards already, which means you don't really want energy, you don't really want power card gains. Like you'll gladly take them, but if there's multiple spirits on my team, I think this is one of the spirits that I wouldn't want to be giving those resources to. Now, high spirit power combo or high power spirit combos, I'm not sure um, which ones would fall under this. I definitely think Ocean sounds like one, but I need more experience with the spirit to answer it. Ability to give out support, I already mentioned that with Turmoil's Touch. Ability to tank, this is not a spirit that is going to be tanking. It's not going to carry or take over the game. How much blight does the spirit take on average? Now, usually it's about 3 to 4, and that's the build that I mentioned, and that's another reason why I have the spirit a little bit lower in A tier, because you're always taking that 3 blight, so you're always going to be flipping that blight card. And that's if you specifically do the build that I'm talking about. But I find this build that I'm talking about to be just so good because you're just generating so much fear once you enter that mid and late game that a lot of the G3 builds don't tend to generate. Ability to create isolation pockets, as I mentioned, very well can. Your Incarna is going to be isolated, as well as you have plenty of pushes. It generates an absurd amount of fear. This is like many minds level of fear, where you're basically like 2 spirits worth of fear every turn. Now you are edge case proof, or you are not edge case proof because you are relying on strife. So any event that's going to ignore strife can be very problematic for this spirit. How many boards are viable for this spirit? I don't have enough answer. I don't have enough information to answer this question. And can the spirit clear its board? It definitely can into some matchups. I think voice, just like lure, it's a perfect A tier spirit. It's definitely above the base tier, and that's just because it's doing so much. You're generating like I said, 7 to 10 fear a turn, killing a lot of invaders, you're moving a lot of invaders around. But it's not so much to where it's just absolutely breaking the game in half. It's just a very solid spirit. Now, one of the changes that the devs had talked about, just because this reclaim loop build wasn't found until playtesting ended, but what they ended up suggesting was removing the energy here, and then they had add or move the Incarna / gain a power card. So you'd get to choose between moving the Incarna or gaining power cards, and then you'd lose that energy on reclaim. And the idea would be to push the spirit away from reclaim looping, but then you also allow it to gain more power cards on reclaim, because sometimes that moving the Incarna doesn't really matter, or you don't really need that extra strife. Looking at number 17, we have Eyes Watch from the Trees. Now, this is one of our Horizon spirits, and it is one of my favorite Horizon spirits. It is a defensive fear monster. Just like looking at Wandering Voice, it is a reclaim loop spirit. A lot of times I'll G3 turn 1, and I'll G2 turn 2, turn 3 I G1, and then turn 4 I G2 bottom bottom. And the idea is I want to max out the Sedate every turn, generating tons of fear as well as defending lands, and then I'm also playing cards to generate fear as well. This is a spirit that I do have a guide if you want to learn how to play the spirit or if you're struggling with the spirit. So consistency. Because you're relying on that reclaim loop, it is a very consistent spirit. Matchups across all single level 6 adversaries, it's pretty solid into a lot of adversaries. There aren't any, well, I guess Scotland is the one matchup where Eyes just completely breaks the adversary in half. But it definitely has some issues into Russia and Habsburg livestock. I've had problems with Eyes. Number of spirit combos. This is a spirit that can combo quite well, and that's because you're able to give out Boon of Watchful Guarding, which allows you to defend 4 and another spirit's land. Also, you love energy, you love extra card gains, so you'll gladly take that type of support. Number of high spirit combos. I'm sure they exist, but I just have not played them yet. Ability to give out support, I've already talked about that. Ability to tank, very possible. Your innate is defending 12 in the land, and a lot of times you don't need defend 12. So you can take an extra couple invaders and you'll still be able to defend those lands. I've played Eyes into multiple Scotland games and been able to defend, um, taking I think 3 to 4 escalations and not have any issues. Ability to carry or take over the game. This is something that Eyes is not going to be able to do. It just doesn't have the energy economy to sustain majors consistently, and that's assuming that build where you rush down to 4 plays. Oh, and this should actually say air. They still haven't fixed that typo. Okay, we talked about that. How much blight does the spirit take on average? It depends. I've had some games go where I take about 0 to 1. Into like Russia, you might have to take about 3 to 5, but it just depends on the matchup and the explorers. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? It can, because you do have fast destruction with abductions as well as eerie noises, which gives you a slow push. But it's not essential to playing the spirit. How much fear does the spirit generate? The spirit generates a lot of fear, just like Wandering Voice, just like Many Minds. It's pretty absurd how much fear this thing generates. You're generating 5 from the innate, as well as 1 from Whispered Guidance, and 2 from Eerie Noises. That's 5, 6, 7, 8, like 9 a turn, which is pretty silly. Is the spirit edge case proof? It is not, and that's because your defend is defend 2, especially in the early game. Defend 2 and defend 4, and defend 2 doesn't. I mean, it defends against an explorer town, but if you ever get +1 damage, then they're going to end up blighting, because defend 2 is not enough. Now, defend 4 is also nice, but it doesn't defend. Well, once again, it defends against a town city, but if they get +1 damage, then you end up blighting. You're not edge case proof. How many boards are viable for this spirit? There are really a couple boards that really make Eyes perform best at. You really want boards where jungles touch all adjacencies. Like this is a good example of a board that you're going to want. You also want good Dahan positioning. So like the mountains, like if mountains comes up, you're going to have issues just because you can't locate Dahan there that efficiently. Now it's not like you're going to lose the game. It just makes the game a lot harder. Of course, your best board is going to be board E, like most spirits, and that's just because you have amazing Dahan positioning as well as great jungle positioning, and you can create a pocket very easily. And can the spirit clear its board? It can into some matchups, into other matchups like England. A lot of times you just have to fear out just because there's so many buildings. I think Eyes is just another solid A tier spirit. It's definitely above baseline because your fear is just so absurd. You're basically 2 spirits worth of fear on the team, as well as not blighting, so you're buffering that blight pool for the team. I think if you just adjusted the defense numbers, especially on Boon of Watchful Guarding, or maybe adjust the fear, it would probably drop down into B tier, but for now, it's an A tier. Looking at number 16, we have Grinning Trickster Stirs Up Trouble. This is another solid A tier spirit, just like the spirits above it. I have Grinning Trickster here just because it has some 6/6 potential by itself. There is a player in my play group that is play Trickster into every 6/6 comp. Has had some success and also some failure, but being able to beat a 6/6 with a spirit just by itself is definitely an achievement in its own right. Trickster is very consistent. There are plenty of builds. There's the rushing down bottom track build. There's the reclaim loop major build on 3 plays. There's so much that this spirit can do. Matchups across all single level 6 adversaries. Trickster destroys Sweden, France, Prussia, these adversaries, Scotland, these adversaries Trickster demolishes. It does have some issues into England, Russia, and HME and livestock. It's different degrees of issues. Like England, if you can play with another spirit that can pocket, you're going to do perfectly fine. But if you play against Russia, Russia tends to give Trickster a little bit of problems just because Russia is more explorer based and Trickster's better at dealing with buildings. Number of spirit combos. Trickster can combo with a lot of different spirits, and that's because you end up putting out so much strife. You can actually donate some of it to other spirits, and you can actually stop ravages on other boards. So you have a abundance of actions. Number of high spirit combos. I'm sure they exist. I'm not too aware of them. I know there's one with River where you rush down plays and then River gives you boon of figure, and then that solves pretty much everything, and then you're just giving that, or you're spending that extra energy to pay for extra strife defending River's lands. The way that this spirit gives out support is via your extra strife adds. The ability to tank, I'm not sure I've ever seen Trickster tank just because you only have a certain amount of strife, and once the invaders exceed a certain threshold in lands, you won't be able to strife all of those invaders, and then therefore the ravage will go through. The ability to carry or take over the game, I haven't seen it happen, though I have seen the spirit pocket very well and basically win the game several turns ahead of the rest of the team. How much blight does the spirit take on average? It depends. Um, at a minimum, I would say about 2 blight, but I've also seen it take around 5, 6, and that's just because there is that inconsistency with your arson, or with let's see what happens. Both of these are random effects that can add blight to lands. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? Yes, it most definitely can, and that's because of its left innate and arson as well as unexpected tigers. And actually, Trickster is going to thrive in pocket formation. One of the reasons why it's not higher is just because if a pocket doesn't form, a lot of times Trickster will fall behind. And that's because Trickster is one of those tempo-based spirits where you have to play ahead of the adversary. If you ever fall behind, the spirit just drowns. How much fear does the spirit generate? It generates a decent amount, especially because of Incite the Mob. And this card is going to have a striped invader deal damage to other invaders in the land, and then every invader killed by this card grants a fear. So this card usually gives about 2 to 3 fear. Could be more if you're playing against like Sweden. Is the spirit edge case proof? Nope, it is not. And that's just because you're relying on strife. There's going to be that time where there's going to be strife ignore, and you're going to get screwed. How many boards are viable for the spirit? I'm not sure which boards are. I just know that there are some boards that are better than others. And can the spirit clear its board? It can. It just depends. I have Trickster solidly in A tier just because it has those great matchups. Like I said, Sweden, France, where it just absolutely decimates the adversary. It just counters it completely. But then I don't have it too high just because it has those bad matchups. Um, it can support, but not as well as some of the spirits above it. Just like Eyes, just like Wandering Voice, I think this is just a solid A tier spirit. I can't see the spirit going much higher on the list, just because a lot of the spirits above it really they begin to break the game in ways that Trickster just can't. Looking at number 15, we have Vital Strength of the Earth, the Nourishing Aspect. Now, this is the last aspect for Earth, and this aspect boosts the power quite significantly. Now, it's going to replace that special rule, and it's going to say whenever you gain a major power, you also gain a minor power. That means whenever you choose this option, there's no reason not to gain a major because you get a free minor. And it says whenever you gain, that means if any other spirit grants you a power card gain, you can gain a major and then you gain a minor. So this is going to increase the number of cards that you see. In addition, it's going to give you this innate that allows you to gather Dahan, add vitality, increasing the health on Dahan, and then also add Dahan. This is like a pseudo defend that also moves Dahan and clears the land. It's essentially like 3 actions tied into one. Very, very powerful. In addition, Nourishing Earth is going to lose Year of a Perfect Stillness, and it's going to gain Voracious Growth. Stillness is one of your worst cards, and you get to replace it with a card that can be flexible. It can do damage, it can remove blight. Um, so let's take a look at the factors here. Consistency. How consistent is Nourishing Earth? It significantly increases how well the spirit does into all of the matchups, and that's just because um, you get fast Dahan movement every turn. It's just I cannot um, I cannot overstate just how important this innate is to its success into all of the matchups. Like base Earth struggles into France. Play Nourishing, and it's going to be a cakewalk. Matchups across all single level 6 adversaries. This is something I just briefly touched up on. Nourishing just pretty much, I don't think there's a single bad matchup it has, and I think that's why it's so high up into A tier. I think England is probably your worst, but even then, you have access. Like you don't generate much fear, like that's your weakest part, but you can draft towards that major style. Um, and I mean, eventually you'll forget some of your bad cards, and you'll tech towards whatever major you draft. But yeah, pretty much the rest of the adversaries like Russia, HME, France, Scotland, those are just a complete breeze with this aspect. Number of spirit combos. Um, I don't know if this spirit combos very well with other spirits. I know other spirits can give this spirit effects like extra card gains, extra energy, and Nourishing will gladly take it. But this is not an aspect or spirit that can give out support, not until the mid late game. And mid late game, you'll be able to give out that gift of strength. But in the early games, you're not going to be able to do that, or the early turns. Looking at the number of high spirit combos, I'm not sure if they exist. That's something that I'll need to play more games with. Ability to support, talked about that. Ability to tank, very well can tank because you're adding that fast vitality with the left innate. It does not matter how many invaders are in the land. When they ravage, they're only going to add one blight, and this vitality can stop it. Ability to carry or take over the game. I have seen this spirit do that just because you're gaining so many power cards with that G2. Eventually, you're going to find those very powerful majors, and then you'll be able to threshold the major, and then hopefully threshold gift of strength, repeating that major. How much blight does the spirit take on average? This is probably the one spirit in the game where the blight you're taking is 0 to -1. Like you're actually because you have guard the healing land as well as voracious growth. A lot of times you're actually healing blight, and you're going to be giving even more blight for the team to work with. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? It's not really going to be able to do that. I mean, it has draw from the fruitful earth that allows you to disrupt builds, but this is not a spirit that's going to be able to stop stop ravages by gathering out towns. This is not a spirit that relies on that isolation pocket. You're really relying on that nourishing to have those successful counterattacks. Spirit generates not that much fear, and that's kind of why it's placed at the top of A tier and not into S tier. If this thing was generating a lot of fear, I could definitely see this being a lot higher. Is it edge case proof? I would say it is, just because you're relying on vitality and not defend, and that vitality is going to stop that blight from coming down. How many boards are viable for this spirit? I'm not sure how many. Um, I know Earth doesn't like board A. It likes to have like board D tends to be very favorable just because you can put a sacred site here on D4 and then here on D8 and access all of your lands. But I don't play much nourishing just because I've been focusing on other spirits. I'm sure board selection isn't that important with the spirit. And can the spirit clear its board? It most definitely can. If you like playing Earth, definitely give Nourishing a go. I think Nourishing Earth is just way more enjoyable than base Earth, and I like base Earth too. But Nourishing just gives the spirit so many more tools to succeed. Looking at number 14, we have Volcano looming high. Now, Volcano, just like the other spirits before it, is a very solid A tier spirit. And that's because there are some things that it really excels in, and then it also has some drawbacks. So let's talk about what it excels at, and that is this G3 is so powerful. It's going to give it energy, extra card plays, as well as presence and power card gains. Every turn besides the first turn, you're going to be gaining a card with the G3 or the G1. And as a result, that is going to increase your consistency because you're always able to sift through the deck and find those cards that are absolutely necessary to succeeding. The build I use with Volcano a lot is I G2 top bottom, then I'll G3 bottom, G3 bottom, and then I'll G1. So 1, 2, 3, turn 4 I reclaim, and then turn 5 I keep G3ing. So you want to alternate between your G1 and your G3. And you want to just move along bottom track because you're getting 2 and 3 energy on those growths. You never really need any energy outside of the 2 energy here. Now, I talked about the consistency. Now, matchups is where Volcano has a little bit of issues. England and Russia can give Volcano some problems, though those matchups aren't unwinnable. They're just a little bit more challenging. Matchups like Prussia, France, Scotland, Sweden, those matchups are absolute cake for the Spirit. The Spirit will absolutely decimate them, and there really is no game to be played against those adversaries. Number of high Spirit combos and the number of combos. Um, so Volcano is doing a lot of damage with that left innate and pyroclastic bombardment. So any spirit that can move invaders into the Volcano lands um, is a Volcano is going to combo well with those spirits. In addition, Volcano can give out support via that exaltation of molten stone. So Volcano can give other spirits between 1 and 3 energy usually, depending on the turn and how much fire you have. And that energy influx allows Volcano to fit into different combos. It also gives other spirits extra range, which sometimes matters. One of the combinations I want to try with Volcano is combo it with a spirit like Relentless Gaze, where Relentless Gaze can restore that destroyed presence with the right innate. And I want Gaze to put a presence in Volcano's land such that Gaze can constantly restore the Volcano's presence because Volcano's destroying those presence with that left innate. I've yet to try it, but it sounds really cool on paper. The ability to tank. Volcano, I don't know if Volcano wants to be a tank. I haven't seen it be a tank, just because a lot of its damage is critical into specific lands. So I guess if, well, I mean, I guess if another spirit is throwing all those invaders into a particular land, I guess it's okay. Um, and you, and because you have so many card drafts, you can dig for those skips or those blight removal effects. The ability to carry or take over the game, Volcano definitely can do that because you can set up that eruption to completely wipe out a portion of the island, or you can just draft majors and threshold the majors because you have 3, 4 plays and you have plenty of elements on your tracks. There was a game recently where I was playing Volcano and I ended up drafting, what was it? It was Rumbling Earthquake. And that was just a crazy game. I was able to threshold this card on 2 plays and just decimate the board. How much blight does the spirit take on average? Usually 1 to 2, though it is going to depend on the matchup on the adversary, but a lot of times Volcano is not blighting that much. Can the spirit create an isolation pocket? It definitely can because it has access to Rain of Ash as well as a lot of fast damage. How much fear does the spirit generate? It's not known to be a fierce spirit, but it does generate a decent amount of fear with that left innate as well as Rain of Ash and whatever fear cards you pick up. Now, is Volcano edge case proof? And Volcano is not, and this is why Volcano is lower on the list. So first, if the island ever goes blighted and you flip that bad blight event that destroys presence every turn, like Memory Fades or Downward Spiral, because your presence is so important to function with the spirit, any presence that you lose means you're going to have trouble destroying presence to hit this left innate properly. In addition, once you go blighted, you're going to get those bad blighted events that cause more presence destruction or causes blight. And that can be very problematic for Volcano because, like I said, you never want to destroy presence. In addition, sometimes you're just going to lose Dahan just because that's just how it is. Your left innate, your special rule, and pyro bombardment kills Dahan. And once that Dahan threshold drops on your board, that makes you susceptible to those events that cause blight because you have less Dahan on your board. As I'm like slowly digging to find them. But there are events in this deck that will that once you lose Dahan, they will punish you. So 1,000 small struggles, there it is right there. Now, with the NI expansion, there's a new event that can actually lose the team the game while you are healthy, and that is waning support. So once again, if you have 5 or fewer Dahan on your board, destroy a presence. And a lot of times, Volcano will drop to 1 presence with that left innate. Well, now there's an event in the game where if you have less Dahan on your board, well, you're gonna lose that last presence, and you're going to lose the game for the entire team. In addition, so that's one of the reasons why I have Volcano rated lower. Another reason is this Mountain Home, this very thematic special rule, tends to be a detriment. Not being able to grow into other land types can be very problematic, especially if you draft one of those specific minors or specific major cards that require a certain targeting threshold. So, like if I was playing and I needed, I guess I can play Bombard, but if I have Tiger's Hunting, like like a very powerful major like this, Volcano just can't even play it because it requires presence in a land with jungle. Now, I know there's ways where you can get around that with like Indomitable Claim and silly stuff like that, but that's just not realistic. Okay, so how many boards are viable for the Spirit? This is another reasons why I knock Volcano a little bit lower. There are a couple boards where Volcano really does well on. So like board E, it does just phenomenal, or board F. These are boards where Volcano will succeed greatly on. But now if you put it on a weaker board, so maybe a good example would be like board D, right? This is just a very awkward Volcano board. So there are some boards where Volcano just can't really play. Can Spirit clear its board? Yes, it most definitely can. Yeah, so the main reason why Volcano is here and not higher up is really, like I said, it's the edge cases, and it's also just you're very restricted in the cards that you can play because of those targeting restrictions. In addition, Volcano, compared to the spirits above it, it just feels a little bit more fair. As we move up the list, the spirits are going to feel significantly stronger than what's below it. Looking at number 13, we have River Travel. Now, this is an aspect that gets rid of the special rule River's Domain. And the travel aspect says that after growth, choose up to 2 Daha among your lands, and you can move them between any of your connected presence. In addition, lands with 4 or more Dahan are considered to be sacred sites and grant defend 1. Now, the reason why River is here is because Boon of Vigor is such a powerful card. Um, this card alone enables so many combinations. Being able to give another spirit 4 or 5 energy is massive. In addition, River comes with a land wipe nuke, and this innate here completely wipes out a land. Now it won't kill the cities, or it won't kill England towns, but into some matchups, 2 damage to all invaders, that's all you need, and that enables a lot of high-powered combos. So why is Travel River higher up than the other aspects of River? Well, Sunshine doesn't have Boon of Vigor, and Boon of Vigor is essential to playing this spirit. In addition, Haven River is going to be playing Boon of Vigor a lot less than River Travel. River Travel is going to reclaim Boon of Vigor every turn and give this card out. The River build that I do is I G2 bottom bottom, G2 bottom bottom, reclaim, and then on turn 4 I G2 bottom bottom, accessing that 5 plays, and I'm just going to play my starting hand over and over and over. So consistency, because you're doing the same thing over and over again, the spirit is very consistent. Matchups across all level 6 adversaries. England, that's your only bad matchup, and that is why the spirit is not in S tier. Having a bad England matchup is just not acceptable. Number of spirit combos and high spirit combos. I've already talked about Boon of Vigor. Boon of Vigor breaks the game in half, and that is what River can do and utilize. Ability to tank. This is not a spirit that can tank, though you do have a nuke. So if someone needs to port in a bunch of France explorers or Russia explorers into a land, well, you can just clear that land in the slow. Ability to carry or take over the game. This is not a spirit that's going to be able to do that, but it's going to enable other spirits to take over the game. How much blight does the spirit take on average? Depends. It's going to be between 1 and 5, and that's just going to be dependent on the adversary. I know Russia, it'll be about 2 to 3, but if it's Sweden and you have a bad explorer, expect 4 to 5. But like I said, it's very dependent on the matchup. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? Yes, it can, and no, it does not need isolation pockets to function. How much fear does the spirit generate? It generates very little fear, and that's one of the reasons why I also knock the spirit. It generates, yeah, I mean, pretty much zero fear until you start killing invaders. Is the spirit edge case proof? No, it is not. As soon as the a bad event flips or the blight card gets flipped and you have those constant presence destruction effects, that's really going to hurt Travel River because you need all of your presence and you're in that reclaim loop. How many boards are viable for the spirit? There's not many. Board A is very good with River. You want this board at all costs. There's a lot of other boards that it can play on. It's just there's edge cases that will pop up if you're not on board A. And can the spirit clear its board? Yes, it most definitely can. This is a spirit that I do have a strategy guide for. If you want to learn more about the spirit, give that guide a look. And finally, number 12, we have a spread of Rampant Green, the regrowth aspect. Now, this is the second aspect that Rampant Green has, and it's going to replace that right innate. And that right innate is a defend innate. Regrowth is going to allow you to start with more destroyed presence, and it's going to allow you to add those destroyed presence back a lot easier. And you're also going to lose the special rule here with regrowth. Now, I have regrowth up here at the very top of A tier, way above Tangles, and that's because you still get to have Gift of Proliferation, and that is one of the reasons why green is broken in half, and it's because this card is so powerful. I'm not too sure if regrowth is better than base green or if base green is better than regrowth. Right now, I have base green rated as higher than regrowth, and that's just because that deep defensive ability with that right innate is so essential to getting proper counterattacks. But I have a feeling that as you raise the difficulty, regrowth is likely going to be better, and that's because defend 2, defend 4, that's not going to be enough to clear lands, or that's not going to be enough to fully defend lands. While you'll be able to easily use this right innate to just skip the lands. So I think into high diff 12, 13, I think regrowth might be better, but lower diff, I think the defensive right innate is probably better. So this is a spirit that could raise up in my tier list into S tier or maybe even X tier, but for now it's going to be at the very top of A tier. Now, looking at consistency, green is very consistent, and that's just because skips, Ravage and build skips are so good. And you have plenty of ways to get presence on the board to do that. Matchups across all level 6 adversaries. Green is solid against everything. Because you're losing that defensive innate, though, my guess is HME is going to be pretty problematic for this spirit. And I wonder how the Russia matchup is. Number of spirit combos and high spirit combos is going to be very high because Gift of Proliferation is broken. The ability to tank, yes, you can tank. You have plenty of build and ravage skips, and it's actually even more than base green. How much blight does the spirit take on average? I would say about 0 to 1. You might even go blight positive as the game goes along, and maybe you can heal blight with some blight healing effects. The ability to create isolation pockets. This is not a spirit that's going to isolate lands. Basically, green's board is just going to be built up, and they're going to be skipping, 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 and then they're going to rely on that heavy hitting major to clear lands. How much fear does the spirit generate? Not much, just because one, you're skipping builds, and two, you don't have the counterattacks without right innate, so you won't even be killing buildings in the ravage step. Is the spirit edge case proof? It's more edge case proof than the defensive style of green. And that's just because defend 2 is not enough to cover an explorer town. Well, I mean, it is enough, but a lot of times if the invaders get +1 damage, then this 3 damage is going to beat that nice defend 2. But regrowth doesn't have the defensive innate, so it's more edge case proof than base green. How many boards are viable for the Spirit? There are some boards that are better than others. I think board D is like your best board because all of the coastal lands are jungle wetland. But I also like board B as well as board E with the Spirit. Can the Spirit clear its board? Yes, it can, but it's going to take quite a long time to do that, and it's going to be heavily reliant on those majors. Now, I'm not going to have the tier list on Tier List Maker at the end of this video showing everything. I also won't have it in the S tier video, but you will see it in the final video of the series. You'll see a full layout of where all the spirits are placed. If you like this video, like, subscribe for more content. I will see you guys in the next video.